I noticed that people would treat me very differently depending on when I looked like this, or this. This variable appearance gave me solid, consistent feedback into what is referred to as the beauty bias or the halo effect, or what I've heard referred to more recently as pretty privilege. It's a difficult subject because everyone knows someone that was treated a bit better by a boss or fit in more easily in school based on how they looked. And everyone knows that when certain people walk into a room, they get everyone's attention. If you've never been that person, maybe you wonder, what would it be like to be that person? It can hit on a deep, shameful part inside of us. Some may find this topic superficial or trivial, but I think that feelings about how we look hit on almost a primal level, and that is why we're talking about it. Projections and assumptions. First, what is happening when we see someone? We can't see if someone is loyal or empathetic, all sorts of qualities. This causes projections or assumptions based on appearance onto the other person. A projection is where we place our own thoughts or feelings onto another person. We mistake what is happening on the inside for what is happening on the outside. A common example in psychology is when someone is cheating in a relationship. They will often blame their partner and get very jealous, thinking that their partner is likely to stray when really they're the one straying because they're not owning their inside feelings or what's going on the inside. With appearance, it happens a little bit differently. We may see someone and based on our own feelings about how we look or how other people look, we make projections and assumptions onto other people. And so, for example, maybe you see someone very attractive and you want to get with them, or you think they're stupid, or you have all of these layers or sort of layering onto someone based on how they look instead of seeing them based on how they actually are. An example would be if you're on a date with someone very good looking, you may overlook a red flag or give a benefit of the doubt and see them in a better light, something you may not have done with a more average looking date. I'm going to link an abstract from a study down below, but they observed that this beautiful is good effect might have more to do with our desire to connect with good-looking people. It might be self-motivated, but unless you're blind and can't see the person, like right now that the camera is off, it's hard to avoid making judgments as to a person's appearance. But as soon as you see anyone, including me, hello, back in this video, you already have thoughts. I mean, maybe there's just little ones in the back of your head, like, what does she know about this topic? She's not pretty. Or what does she know about people's struggles? She's not bad looking. Like, you may have already had thoughts, which actually made me very nervous to shoot this video. I shot all day yesterday and it was just terrible because I was so in my head. Today I'm just in a hoodie, chilling with some decaf, having a conversation with you guys. But yeah, that was definitely in my head going into this. And some of it is a little bit natural. Out of the 5 senses, the first one to kick in, the first stimuli you receive is sight. Before you know how someone smells or what they feel like in a warm embrace or what their voice sounds like, often you see them before any of those other things. A lot of this has a genetic and biological component to it, evaluating if someone would likely successfully pass down our genes or not. Our brains are wired to pass on our genes and are constantly scanning the environment for the reward to potentially do that. The same way we look for food or other rewards that help our survival. Maybe you felt judged in dating with this. You've been in a love triangle situation and wondered, if I was better looking, would that person have chosen me? I know I've been there, even though of course we know deep down there's so much more to love and relationships than appearances. But beauty is everywhere, and it's hard to escape. We know all forms of media have affected this, from social media to television, magazines, advertisements, the porn industry. We're seeing disproportionately attractive people everywhere, and it's altering our perception of reality. Suddenly the bar has been raised when it comes to what is attractive, and the run-of-the-mill person doesn't seem as attractive because we become desensitized. The same way we become desensitized when it comes to sweet things, and an apple doesn't taste as sweet after candy. After seeing filters and fillers, suddenly our perception of beauty has become desensitized. And in a lot of cultures, like where I live in the United States, It's just what people value and talk about often. Next, we're going to get into the halo effect, which is one of the main defining theories of this topic. And it does not just pertain to attraction. Here, we'll look at the definition from Encyclopedia Britannica. Halo effect, error in reasoning in which an impression is formed from a single trait or characteristics is allowed to influence multiple judgments or ratings of unrelated factors. An example that's different from attraction is someone in the workplace who's extremely put together and organized, leading their boss or other coworkers into thinking that they are also competent or intelligent. It is an assumption of multiple traits, or that conclusion that they have all of these traits based on the one trait. The halo effect also applies to companies, brands, and not just individuals. An example that Investopedia discussed was that when the iPod was successful, people assumed that Mac sales would go up, benefiting the company through people investing. And with companies and brands in general, it helps protect them when they experiment with new products because people already have a positive view of this company. The way the halo effect would work with attraction is someone is perceived to be beautiful or handsome, and then they're also assumed to be intelligent or trustworthy, or someone that appears to be more dominant is assumed to be a better provider. All of these things that are not true correlations, but just judgments that we make in a split second, maybe even unconsciously. So here is what I learned diving into this topic. Let's start with what I noticed observationally in my own life. When I looked like this, a TA might not give me the answers for an exam, but really go out of his way in scheduled office hours to make sure I got the help that I needed. Traffic would just stop, not in a crosswalk. Nope, just, ma'am, do you need to cross the street here? You look like maybe you might need to cross the street here. Go into a grocery store. Ma'am, can we help you find anything? This night, I forgot my wallet and I told my friends, oh, don't worry, I won't have to pay for drinks tonight anyway. Not in a cocky way, I just knew that someone would offer. If you've seen in The Office, the episode where Amy Adams comes in as like the purse lady, and she's obviously beautiful and selling purses, all of the men are just tripping over themselves and Michael is like going out of his way. He must get her the perfect cup of coffee. That's what it feels like. And it's sort of just like the world smiling upon you versus being invisible and feeling invisible. You know, the alternative is you're at work and maybe you say a joke and nobody laughs. Somebody that's good looking says a similar joke and everyone cracks up because they're just mesmerized by that person. You see that same treatment that you were getting, the ma'am, can I help you in the store treatment, and it's being given to other people and not you. Now, the reason why I feel okay about this when I'm not given that preferential treatment is because after a while of this back and forth flip-flopping, you realize that a lot of times it's ego-based and fleeting niceties from strangers, often that just basically want in your pants or want something from you or maybe to be associated with you, or that ego kick that they would get from a nice interaction with someone they find attractive, versus real, genuine connection and love that's no strings attached from someone that actually knows you, which is so much deeper and more meaningful. One is real, one is comments on a thirst trap pic. And of course, being or feeling invisible is nothing compared to being actively bullied or treated poorly based on how one looks. So we do want to acknowledge that, of course, that is on the other end of the spectrum and more difficult. In the 7th grade, I'll always remember getting called to the front of the class and scolded for cheating when it was actually 2 other girls who were young and blonde and developing early that were the ones cheating. I couldn't help but wonder, if I looked like them, would I have gotten in trouble? One question we should be asking at this point is, what is attractiveness, or what are the components of attractiveness? I've broken them down into 4 factors. I made this up, I didn't find this. You guys can let me know down below if you agree or not. 2 are controllable, 2 are things we cannot control. They are genetics, presentation, inner qualities, and preferences of the other person. So the first is genetics, and this is what we think of all of the time when we think of beauty or handsomeness. It is things such as thick hair or facial symmetry or a muscular frame. And not anything we do to alter these things, but just kind of like genetically how we show up in the world. It's so often talked about and often what causes a lot of shame because we can't control it, that I don't really feel the need to talk about this one too much. Next. Presentation. This is what we do with that blank canvas that is us. So whether that's how you choose to style your hair, or if you get tattoos or not, or a bold lip color that you choose to throw on, anything you do to show up as you, that you're doing to like alter that genetic blank canvas that you're given. Third is those inner qualities, or radiance, confidence, personality, just anything you're giving off to the world that comes more from the inside. I think I'm getting a call from one of our correspondents on this topic. Off to them. Coming to you live, and this just in. 70% of individuals polled found Adam Driver very attractive. When asked further to elaborate, they said, he's not attractive in a traditional way, but man, Kylo Ren. Well, they said that his acting, his charisma, his confidence, his edge is what pushed them over the edge. Now back to you. Thank you, very insightful. The last component is the preferences and prejudices of the other person, because beauty is subjective and also attraction involves two parties. If we think of it like magnets, in order for there to be a magnetic pull, there needs to be, of course, polarization, but there also needs to be two parties. There's the person being viewed, but there's also the viewer. And along with that, there experiences and preferences and the lens that they see the world through. Just like you may go into a bar and think some stranger is extremely attractive, and your friend may look at them and not be getting that feeling at all. Which brings us to the fact that, again, we focus so much on genetic components of attraction, such as, like we talked about, things like hip to waist ratio, or these like biological evolutionary components. I think a lot of like science and just people in general focus on these things. But throughout different time eras or in different cultures, different things are considered attractive, showing that it's often culture and not just biology shaping what we find attractive. We know that there were periods where larger body sizes were considered a signal of health and wealth and attractive, versus in the 1900s, particularly the later parts, like getting into the 1990s, there were different ideal body types, such as the fashion industry pushing extremely thin standards of beauty, and ideal body types are constantly changing. Which shows that there's just as much of a cultural push for different features being attractive as opposed to some sort of objective truth as to what is beauty. On this note, we also need to acknowledge that pretty privilege is often tied up with a culture's views on race. Whatever race controls more positions of authority or the media is going to impact what features we find attractive. In the United States, there is vast amounts of white privilege, and so pretty privilege is going to be connected to that. We can't just dress this up in a different package and call it lookism and not also address how, if someone is treated a certain way based on how they look, it may also be just based on how closely their features are aligned with Western beauty ideals. This is called Eurocentrism, and it is seeing preferences, history, the world at large through a Western lens. Additionally, some cultures have colorism embedded into it, where certain skin tones or shades are considered attractive, which has been prevalent in India. Keep all this in mind in the rest of the video. Times, I hope and believe, are starting to shift. I did share videos from other people's perspectives in the description box because they can speak on their lived experience in a way that I cannot, and it's really important to get different perspectives on these topics. Now on to the research of both the benefits and detrimental effects of someone being considered good looking. How attractive someone is has been shown to impact interviews for jobs, grades, social standing in a given group, as well as income, a phenomenon known as the beauty premium. And of course, as we know, the dating market. In one study I learned about in university, scientists were trying to determine what was the number one factor that would determine if someone would get a second date? And yeah, not just being open to meeting the person, wanting to see them again. And that number one factor was how attractive they were. One observational study found that parents treated their children differently, often favoring the better looking child. Now on to some downsides or detrimental effects of someone being good looking. The first is jealousy. This can take place in the dating market, but then also the same perks that they were given in, for example, a situation with an employer, that could work against them if their potential employer is feeling insecure or jealous around them. Also, assumptions and projections. We talked about a lot of that earlier, how they might be assumed to be, more loyal or intelligent or different things, or actually it wasn't more trustworthy was the term, and intelligent are the two that I've read about. I've also read that people can assume that they are less intelligent, and that often depends on the gender and the age of the person that's being viewed. They can be viewed to be more promiscuous, vain, conceited, or people might assume that they've had an easier life when that may not at all be true, and that can discount certain trauma that the person has been through. Again, we're interacting with sort of a fantasy in these situations. Whenever we're interacting with somebody, we're often seeing them how we are, not necessarily how they are. And then a better looking person is going to be getting more attention, more focus on them. So we might be projecting more onto them that we're not a more average looking person. This is referred to as the reverse halo effect, where positive evaluations lead to negative consequences, the opposite of the halo effect. And a lot of these projections can sort of help protect us. Maybe you see someone very attractive and you think, I bet they're not smart. Nobody that pretty is smart. And that assumption protects your self-image. And it might happen in a flash second, not even consciously. It's something that's simmering beneath the surface. One other detriment can be unwanted attention. The catcalling or unwanted staring or unwanted advances from strangers can make them wish that they were invisible in those moments. This next one applies more to that top 1 or 2% of good-looking people, but they often don't know who to trust. They're not sure who's with them for their personality versus, only their good looks. And lastly, they can have a disproportionate fear of aging. If you deem your best asset or one of your greatest assets as something that's going to fade or at least change over the next 10, 20, 40 years, it can mess with your head. Even though there is beauty, of course, at all different ages, we do look different at different stages in our lives, and they can be very much afraid of those natural transitions. So that covered some of the benefits and detrimental effects of being good looking, but now we're going to cover 2 points that are in a more neutral category that don't necessarily point one way or the other. The first being that we get used to how our life is on a daily basis. Have you ever really, really wanted a promotion? You worked so hard, you were craving this, and then you finally got it. And life was really good for a few weeks, maybe a month or so. And then all of a sudden it just became normal to you, and it didn't really make your life better. It didn't make you much happier on a day-to-day basis. We very much get used to how our life is, day to day. So just because someone who is very attractive may have certain things easier doesn't necessarily mean that they're happier as a result. We don't really know their life outlook or attitude or general well-being, because I highly doubt that they wake up every day just super excited and grateful to have their face. Additionally, it can be tempting to form a story in our minds. For example, here, attractive people have easier lives. And then we look for and scan the environment for facts that support our hypothesis. We do this both sometimes in research and also just in our day-to-day assumptions. And then we often toss out evidence to the contrary that disproves our points. I noticed myself almost doing it here. I almost wanted to just kind of toss out, I'd find an article that said the opposite of what I'm trying to talk about here in this, I was like, oh, well, that doesn't prove my point. Let me not use that. And it's like, well, no, wait a second. That answers the question. It just doesn't answer it how maybe I expected. So for example, in the natural sciences, there was a study I linked below that talked about an unattractiveness premium, or literally the opposite of the attractiveness premium. In that field, unattractive people were maybe assumed to produce better results, or not all elections were swayed as much by looks. Taller men are more likely to be elected president, but a lot of voters, in another article I read, are really not that much swayed by looks, which is super true. Like, let's say there was a candidate that just didn't believe in anything you believed in, you probably wouldn't vote for them, even if they were very hot. Findings such as this show that these questions, such as do attractive people have easier lives, can't be answered simply in a yes or no question. Just like the research doesn't always point to a big resounding yes or no. Sometimes the research quietly says, I don't know if there's as much of a correlation as we originally thought. I get though that it can still feel difficult to see certain people get preferential treatment though in many situations, and so we're going to get into some practical takeaways next. Here are 9 strategies and takeaways. Strategy number 1, awareness. In a Harvard article I linked down below, interviews can often be impacted by racism, sexism, and ageism. Something that's not often talked about is the beauty bias in these situations. People are often swayed simply by how attractive someone is in addition to those things. Now, this won't level the playing field completely. However, using AI or machines can help make things a little bit less biased, because a machine will be less biased. We should work on dismantling these things on a larger scale, but in the meantime, using machines for certain screenings can help prevent people from being unfairly aided based on how they look. It's an uncomfortable thing to talk about. Similar to fat phobia, we don't want to talk about these things. They're a shameful part about the way we treat each other as humans, so it gets pushed under a rug. But we need to talk about it. What gets brought out into the light and talked about has the potential to change. And it impacts our mental health, particularly young teens who are constantly on social media bombarded by altered images affecting their self-image. Strategy number 2, our words. What other adjectives can we use to describe people? Can we stop telling kids at such a young age that they're beautiful or handsome, and thus letting them define themselves at such a young age based on how they look? Strategy 3, media consumption. We can support companies that show real people with real bodies instead of lots of airbrushing. We can watch shows with more diverse populations instead of always watching shows with the same kinds of people in them. We can tell social media companies that we don't like the fake filters, and we can follow people that post more genuine content as opposed to purely aspirational content. Nobody's life is 100% aspirational or perfect. And lastly, if you choose to watch adult content, there are kinds out there that have people with more natural bodies as opposed to very surgically altered bodies. All of this affects how we view what is beauty. Strategy number 4, dig deeper. Can we make an effort to look beyond the looks? There should probably be a Cyrano de Bergerac reference here, but at a loss for it. I think if we want to prioritize different things, we can. And I would dare us to socially do that. What usually happens?
I started seeing someone new.
Oh yeah? She hot?
Can I see a photo?
But what if we said something else instead?
So I started seeing someone new.
Oh yeah? What's her credit score?
Does she wash her hands before she cooks?
Guys, come on, not like that. Something normal.
What? Like this? Oh yeah? Does she make you happy?
Does she make you smile?
Yes, just like that. I know we've been using dating for examples, but just to continue on with that, if you know, I mean, we all are affected by looks, but if you make a list on a sheet of paper of the values you want or the traits you want or what's most important to you in a partner, you're going to be less swept away by these urges. Even though, of course, I'm not telling you to rise above your biology, and it's natural to, have your heart skip a beat when you see someone. There's no shortage of beautiful people in the world. Strategy 5. we can take the steps to present ourselves how we want. Almost everything in this video has been about mindset shifts or psychological aspects, but here we're going to face the fact that yes, to some extent, the world does care about how you look. What are we going to do about it? It's okay to put our best foot forward or present ourselves in our best light, especially when that helps make us feel more confident. When it comes to changing appearance in any way, we can choose to view this as art and a form of self-expression, as opposed to a chore or covering one's flaws. Maybe you don't have time to put on makeup every day, and if you're behind on your car payments, your money's not going to be going to getting your brows and eyelashes done on a regular basis. This is about the smaller things that really make a big difference. Having good hygiene, spending a couple minutes in the morning to style your hair the way you like, good posture, paying attention to the color or fit of your clothing. And even if you don't have the money to buy, expensive brands, you can even go to Goodwill and pay attention to how you feel in that clothing. Take your time, really go through things and find something that works for you and that you feel good in.
I always say it's never just about, the new dress or the right shoe. It's about walking powerfully in those items. And I do think that when we are looking good, we're feeling good. And when we're feeling good, that's when we can conquer anything. Makeover implies, right, that there's a drastic change and, it goes from soup to nuts. I basically believe that even the smallest changes and tweaks can really have a profound effect on the lens that you see yourself through. So I always say to my clients, we're going to basically work with you, and we're going to zhuzh a little bit, right? It's kind of you, but better. Don't try and be someone else or something that you're not. But sometimes, to your point, it's the smallest change. It's the change in colors. Maybe it's a haircut. Maybe it's, the fit of clothing or the style of clothing. It doesn't have to be from 0 to 180.
And guys, for more on Carol, you can find her website and more information down below in the description box. Strategy 6, growing confidence. A lot of the boost in life that attractive people get is more from their confidence and not necessarily from anything inherent about them. I'm going to link an article down below on that. I understand that it's not as simple as to just get confident, and that's probably a topic for another video, but the good news is that this is a skill that can be cultivated and grown. Not so much a strategy, but a point to remember and that we can gain comfort in is that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Next time you're comparing yourself to someone, remember that we are not only attracted to people based on cold external features alone. Remember a time that you were very much into someone and found them more beautiful as a person the more you got to know them. And further, you were maybe even more attracted to them based on their quirks and what makes them unique, as opposed to them being some sort of generic cookie cutter version of beauty. And the same applies to you. Strategy 8, shift your focus by cultivating skill sets and focusing on your values. If you feel objectified, and if you feel afraid of aging, and if part of one of the main things you value in yourself is based on how you look, this tip is for you. What you value in yourself is what other people will value in you. I heard this from a therapist at one point, and it's very much true. Maybe you can work on a hobby or your career or personal character traits such as integrity or a positive outlook or work ethic, things that can help you look inside and value yourself in different ways so that you realize that your abs or your cheekbones, however amazing, are not the best thing about you. Strategy number 9, non-comparison. We don't look at a beautiful sunset over the mountains and think, not as pretty as yesterday's though. We don't watch a dolphin swim in the ocean thinking, well, not as majestic as a lion though. We don't watch a butterfly fly so one of a kind and think, not as cute as our dog though. We appreciate these creatures for who they are, what they are, and it's time that we embraced and stepped into who we are and appreciated ourselves for who we are. We can consistently choose to dig deeper and look beyond the exterior while still appreciating the beauty around us, because we are physical humans, but there is so much more to us, and we can settle it for Derek Zoolander once and for all. But there is more to life than being really, really, really ridiculously good looking. Thank you all for watching. Smash like if you liked the video. If you're still here, that's freaking awesome. You watched the whole thing. I really appreciate you guys. Thanks for being a part of this community, and I'll see you all next time for a different deep dive on a different psychology or self-development topic.